The rain wasn't just falling. It was a curtain, a veil that turned the world into a watercolor smear of gray and black. I was driving through a quiet neighborhood, my headlights carving a narrow path through the deluge when I saw her. She stood at the end of a driveway, illuminated like a ghost in the beam of my high beams, her arms wrapped tightly around herself, as if holding her soul in place. Her eyes weren't on the road, weren't on the rain. They were on me, unblinking, piercing through the windshield and into my chest. In that moment, I felt it, a hook in my gut, pulling me toward her, toward something I didn't understand and didn't want to know. It was 8:07 p.m. on an autumn night, the kind where the air smells of wet leaves and regret. I was 23, fresh out of college, driving aimlessly to clear my head after a fight with my girlfriend. The neighborhood was a small cul-de-sac, maybe 40 houses, nestled between two cities that felt a world away. The rain had started an hour ago, soft at first, then relentless, turning the streets into rivers. My wipers slapped rhythmically, a metronome to my thoughts, but they couldn't keep up with the downpour. I wasn't in a hurry, just drifting the radio off the hum of the engine, my only companion. I'd grown up in a place like this, suburban, predictable, where the scariest thing was a neighbor's dog barking too late. But tonight, this street felt different, like it was holding its breath. The houses were dark, their windows blind, as if the storm had chased everyone inside. I turned a bend, my tires hissing on the wet asphalt, and that's when I saw her. She was maybe 20 feet ahead, standing motionless at the edge of a driveway, her tank top and jeans clinging to her skin. Her arms were crossed, her shoulders hunched, but her face was what stopped me. Her eyes were wide, red-rimmed, locked on mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. I slowed the car. My instincts split. Part of me wanted to keep driving, to pretend I hadn't seen her. But another part, the part that still believed in being a good guy, urged me to stop. She looked like she needed help, like she was lost or hurt or running from something. I rolled down the passenger window, the manual crank squeaking, cold rain spitting into the car. "Hey," I called, leaning across the seat. "You okay?" She didn't answer, didn't move. Her eyes stayed on me, unblinking tears, mixing with the rain streaming down her cheeks. Her lips parted, but no words came, just a faint shudder of breath. I tried again, louder. "Is everything all right? Do you need help?" Still nothing. But then she moved not toward me, but toward the window. Her hand reached out, fingers pale and trembling, and grabbed the top of the glass. Her nails scraped the edge, inches from my face, and I flinched, my heart slamming against my ribs. Her touch wasn't aggressive, but it was desperate, like she was anchoring herself to the car, to me. Up close, I could see her better. Young, maybe 18 or 20, her hair plastered to her scalp, her eyes bloodshot and hollow. She was crying, but it wasn't just sadness. It was something deeper, something that made my skin crawl. "Are you hurt?" I asked, my voice shaking. "I can call someone, or I can give you a ride somewhere." I didn't know why I offered that. The words just spilled out, a reflex, to fill the silence, to do something. But she didn't respond. She just stared, her fingers still gripping the window, her breath hitching in short, ragged gasps. The rain drummed on the roof, the wipers slapped, and the silence between us grew heavier, like a weight pressing on my chest. When I was 10, I'd found a stray cat in our backyard, its leg caught in a trap. It had looked at me the same way, eyes wide, pleading, but too scared to move. I'd tried to free it, but it hissed, swiped at me, and I'd run inside, crying. My dad had gone out later, said the cat was gone, but I'd always wondered if it had died out there alone. That memory hit me now, the same helpless ache, the same fear of getting too close. I glanced down the street, hoping for a sign, another car, a light in a window, anything to break the spell. But the neighborhood was a void, the houses dark and silent. I looked back at her, and something shifted. Her stare wasn't just intense. It was wrong, like she wasn't seeing me, but something through me, something behind me. My neck prickled, and I fought the urge to turn around to check the back seat to make sure I was alone. "Do you want to get in?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I didn't mean it. Not really. But I couldn't just leave her there, could I? She didn't nod, didn't shake her head. She just kept staring, her fingers tightening on the window, her tears falling faster now. The rain soaked her, but she didn't seem to care, didn't seem to feel it. I was about to ask again when a chill ran through me, not from the cold, but from a sudden, unshakable certainty that I needed to leave. "Now, I'm sorry," I said, my voice cracking. "I don't think I can help you." I don't know why I apologized, but the words felt necessary, like a plea for forgiveness. I started to roll up the window, expecting resistance, expecting her to pull harder. But her fingers slipped away, limp and lifeless, and she stepped back, her eyes never leaving mine. I shifted into gear, my foot trembling on the gas, and drove off the car, lurching forward. In the rear-view mirror, I watched her fade into the rain, a pale figure swallowed by the dark. I drove for miles, my hands shaking, my mind racing. What had just happened? Was she in trouble? Was she a trap? Some kind of lure for something worse? I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? I saw a girl crying in the rain, and she scared me. It sounded ridiculous, even to me. But the memory of her eyes, her stare clung to me like damp clothes, impossible to shake. I got home around 9:30, my apartment feeling too small, too quiet. I locked the door, checked it twice, and sat on the couch, the TV on, but muted a distraction I didn't watch. I kept replaying the encounter, searching for meaning. Had I abandoned someone who needed me? Or had I escaped something I didn't understand? I couldn't sleep that night, the rain tapping on my windows, like her fingers on the glass, her eyes haunting every shadow. The next day, I drove back to the neighborhood, half expecting to find her still standing there, a statue in the daylight. But the street was empty, the houses bright, and ordinary kids riding bikes in the cul-de-sac. I stopped at the driveway where I'd seen her, but there was no sign of her, no footprints, no trace. I asked a neighbor, an older man, watering his lawn, if he'd seen a young woman last night. He shook his head, said the storm had kept everyone inside. Weeks passed, and I tried to forget her, but she lingered a ghost in my thoughts. I stopped driving at night, avoided that neighborhood, told myself it was just a strange moment, nothing more. But then, months later, I saw a missing persons flyer at a gas station. A girl 19, last seen in that same neighborhood the night of the storm. Her photo stopped me cold. It was her, the same eyes, the same hollow stare. Her name was Emily, and she'd vanished without a trace. I went to the police, told them what I'd seen, but they didn't take me seriously. People see things in storms. The detective said, his voice tired. Could have been someone else. But I knew it was her. I knew. And the guilt gnawed at me, a worm in my gut. Had I left her to die? Had she been running from something, someone, and I'd driven away? Or was she something else? Something that wore her face, that stared into me and saw something I couldn't. I'll never know. But every time it rains, I see her. In the reflection of my windshield, in the shadows of my room, her eyes follow me, unblinking, accusing. I lock my doors, close my curtains, but it doesn't matter. She's there, waiting. Her fingers reaching for the glass, her stare a wound that never heals. Some nights I drive past that neighborhood, hoping to find her, to make it right. But the rain always falls, and the street is always empty, and her eyes are always watching just beyond the light. The apartment was supposed to be my sanctuary, a haven carved from the chaos of my old life. But that afternoon, as I stood dripping from the shower, the air thick with steam, I heard it a faint tug at my bedroom door, the lock holding firm against an unseen hand. Someone was there inside our home, and it wasn't Jack. The realization sank into me like a blade. Safety is an illusion, and some threats slip through the cracks we never see. Moving to the new apartment felt like a rebirth. My last place was a crumbling house, a labyrinth of creaking floors and shared bathrooms where I rented a single room, barely big enough for a bed. 8 strangers lived there, their lives, a constant hum of noise and tension. It was cheap, a necessity, when my bank account hovered near zero, but it drained me each day, a battle to carve out a sliver of peace. The new place was different, a 2-bedroom apartment, clean and modern, with walls that didn't whisper of past tenants. I shared it with Jack, a guy I'd known from college. We weren't close, just friendly enough to split rent and coexist without drama. He was easygoing, always quick with a laugh, and I trusted him to hold up his end of the deal. Each of us had our own bathroom, a luxury that felt like a gift after years of communal sinks. For the first time in months, I breathed easier, the weight of survival lifting just enough to let me hope. That afternoon, about 2 weeks after moving in, I came home from work, my shoulders aching from a long shift at the warehouse. The air was crisp, the city settling into its late-day rhythm of honking cars and distant sirens. Jack was in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, scrolling through his phone. Heading to the store, he said, his voice casual. "Need anything?" I shook my head, too tired to think, and he nodded, grabbing his keys. Back in a bit. I watched him leave the front door, closing with a soft thud, and headed to my room, craving the solitude of a hot shower. My bedroom was my fortress, a small space I'd already made my own, with a few posters and a cluttered desk. The attached bathroom was a haven, its tiles cool under my feet. I locked the door behind me, a habit from the old house where privacy was a battle won with deadbolts. The shower's steam enveloped me, washing away the grime of the day, the water's heat loosening the knots in my back. I lingered, letting the world fade until the mirror fogged and time slipped away. When I stepped out, toweling off the air was warm, the room a cocoon of quiet. Then it happened, a subtle shift, a pressure against the bedroom door, the lock resisting with a faint metallic groan. Someone's trying to get in. My heart lurched, the towel slipping in my grip. I froze, half-dressed, my eyes fixed on the door. Jack. It had to be him. Who else could it be? But the timing was wrong. He'd just left for the store, hadn't he? I strained to listen, expecting his voice, a knock, anything, to confirm it was him. Nothing came, just the oppressive silence of the apartment, broken only by the drip of the showerhead. I pulled on my jeans, my hands unsteady, and moved closer to the door, my breath shallow. Say something, I thought, willing Jack to announce himself. The silence mocked me, heavy, with a presence I couldn't see. Why would he try my door without calling out? He'd never done that before, never breached the unspoken boundary of our space. I finished dressing my movements, mechanical, my mind racing. Maybe he forgot something. I shaved the razor's scrape, grounding me, and stepped into the hallway. The apartment's cool air, a shock against my damp skin. The living room was empty, the kitchen still. Jack's absence, a tangible void. I crossed to his room, the door slightly ajar, and peered inside. His bed was unmade, his desk a mess of books and cables, but he wasn't there. Jack. I called my voice, thin in the quiet. No answer. I retreated to my room, unease coiling in my gut, and grabbed my phone. My fingers typed a quick text. "You at the store." His reply came fast, a single line that turned my blood to ice. Yeah, almost done. It wasn't Jack. The words echoed in my skull, each syllable a hammer blow. Someone else had been in our apartment, their hand on my door, their presence a violation of the safety I'd fought for. I stood rooted, my phone trembling in my hand, when another sound cut through the front door, opening, then closing a deliberate sequence that sent me sprinting down the hallway. I reached the door, my heart pounding, and slammed the deadbolt into place, the metal's weight a fragile shield. I called Jack, my voice shaking as I spilled the story, the door, the silence, the impossibility of it all. I forgot to lock the front door. He admitted, his tone heavy with guilt. I'm on my way back. I weighted my back against the wall, my eyes scanning the apartment's shadows. The living room's couch, the kitchen's counter, the hallway's dim corners. Each held the potential for a hidden figure, a threat that hadn't fully retreated. When Jack returned, his face pale, we searched every inch of the place. Closets, under beds, behind curtains. Nothing was missing. No trace of the intruder remained, but the air felt tainted, the apartment no longer ours. We locked the door religiously after that, a ritual born of fear. But the mystery lingered a splinter in my mind. Who was it? Why were they here? Months later, I heard a story that gave me pause. A friend from work, over beers at a dive bar, mentioned a rash of break-ins in our neighborhood. They don't always take stuff, he said, his voice low. Sometimes they just walk through like they're scoping the place, learning who's home when. I nodded, my throat tight, the memory of that afternoon flooding back. Had our intruder been one of them? A scout testing our defenses? Or was it something personal? Someone who knew Jack knew me. The thought was unbearable, a shadow that followed me through the apartment's halls. There's another memory, one I've kept buried. The day we moved in, the landlord stopped by a wiry man with tired eyes. He handed us the keys, his voice gruff. "Nice place," he said, glancing at the door. "But lock it. People wander in sometimes, thinking it's still vacant." I'd laughed, brushing it off as a landlord's paranoia, but his words haunted me after that day. Had he known something, seen something in the building's history I never asked, but his warning became a mantra, a reminder that even a locked door can't keep every threat at bay. The apartment is behind me now, a chapter closed when Jack and I went our separate ways. I live alone these days, in a house with double locks and a security system I check compulsively. But the memory of that afternoon lingers a crack in the foundation of my peace. Some doors hold fast, but others betray you, letting the darkness slip inside. I still hear that tug at my bedroom door in quiet moments, and I wonder who stood on the other side, their intentions, a secret I may never unravel. Nah. The darkness didn't belong in the store. It moved like it was alive, stalking the aisles just beyond my sight. I was 19, working the night shift at a small-town grocery store, alone in a cavern of shelves and shadows. The place was old, its fluorescent lights dim, casting a sickly glow that never reached the corners. It was past midnight. The doors locked the world outside, dead silent. Then I heard it, a footstep, deliberate and heavy, echoing from somewhere deep in the store. My heart lurched. I wasn't alone. The job was a summer gig, a favor from the owner who knew my mom. I'd show up at 9 p.m., right before closing, and stay until the tasks were done, cleaning, stocking, prepping for the morning crew. It usually took me past midnight, sometimes until 2 a.m., alone in a store that felt too big, too empty. The lights were mostly off, just a few dim ones left on, enough to see, but not enough to feel safe. I didn't mind at first. The solitude was freeing, a chance to blast music through my earbuds and move at my own pace. But tonight, the store felt different. The air was thick, heavy, with a stillness that pressed against my skin. like it was waiting for something to break. I was in aisle 6, stacking cans of soup, when the first sound came. Not a creak, not a hum from the freezers, but a step slow, deliberate, like someone testing the floor. I froze, one hand on a can, the other pulling an earbud free. The music faded, replaced by the store's eerie quiet, broken only by the faint buzz of a light above. I waited my breath, shallow, listening. Nothing. Just the silence. But it wasn't empty. It was alive, watchful, like eyes hidden in the dark. I called out my voice, thin and shaky. Hello, stores. Closed. No answer. I told myself it was nothing, the building settling my imagination, running wild. But my pulse was racing, a warning I couldn't ignore. I moved to the end of the aisle, peering into the shadows. The store stretched out before me, a maze of shelves and displays, the far corners swallowed by darkness. The dim lights flickered, casting jagged patterns on the floor, making the aisles seem to shift. I scanned each one, my eyes straining to catch movement. But there was nothing, just rows of cereal boxes and cleaning supplies staring back like silent witnesses. I shook my head, trying to laugh it off, but the sound came again. Another step closer now, from aisle 8. My stomach twisted. The rhythm was wrong, not hurried, but measured, like someone pacing, savoring the quiet. I grabbed the broom I'd been using earlier, its handle cold in my hands, a flimsy shield against whatever was out there. I crept toward aisle 8, my sneakers silent on the linoleum, my breath hitching with every step. The store felt bigger now, the aisles stretching endlessly, the shadows pooling deeper. I reached the corner, my heart pounding so hard it hurt, and peeked around. Empty. Just shelves, cans, and the faint glow of a flickering light. But the air was wrong, charged with a presence I couldn't see. They're here. They're watching. I backed away, my eyes darting to the other aisles, expecting a figure to step out. But the store stayed silent, mocking me with its stillness. I returned to my tasks, but my hands shook as I stacked cans, my ears straining for any sound. The store was a trap now, its open spaces a lie, hiding corners and crevices where someone could wait. I remembered a story my cousin told me about a night he worked late at a warehouse. He'd heard noises, thought it was rats, until he found a man hiding in the shadows, watching him for hours. The thought sent a shiver down my spine, but I pushed it away, focusing on the work. I had to finish, had to get out. But the steps came again, this time from aisle 10, further back near the freezers. They're moving. They're circling. I dropped the can I was holding. The clatter deafening in the quiet, and grabbed the broom again. I moved toward aisle 10, my legs trembling, my mind screaming to run, but my feet refusing to stop. The freezers hummed their cold seeping into the air, making my breath fog. I reached the aisle, my grip tight on the broom, and looked down. There he was, a man standing at the far end, his back to me. Tall, dressed in dark clothes, his head slightly tilted, like he was listening. My blood ran cold. He knows I'm here. I shouted, my voice cracking. Stores closed. You need to leave. He didn't move, didn't turn, just stood there, a statue carved from shadow. Then slowly, he walked away, disappearing around the corner into aisle 11. I stood frozen, the broom slipping in my sweaty hands. My mind raced. Call the police. Run, hide. But my body wouldn't move. The store was a labyrinth now, each aisle a path to danger, each shadow a threat. I forced myself to follow my steps, hesitant, my heart a drumbeat in my chest. I reached aisle 11, but it was empty, the man gone like he'd melted into the dark. I scanned the other aisles, my eyes wide, my breath ragged. The lights flickered faster now, strobing, making the shadows dance. I called out again, weaker this time. I know you're here. Get out. No answer. But the silence was heavier, like it was closing in. I started checking the store, aisle by aisle. My broom raised like a weapon. The front doors were locked, the windows secure, but the back room loomed in my mind, a storage area with crates and shelves, a perfect place to hide. I avoided it, focusing on the main floor, but the fear grew, a living thing clawing at my chest. I was halfway through aisle 5 when the steps came again, behind me, close, maybe 20 feet away. I spun around, my breath catching, and saw him. He was there, walking toward me, his face hidden in shadow. I shouted, my voice raw, but he didn't stop, his steps steady, deliberate, like a predator closing in. I turned and ran my sneakers pounding the floor, my heart screaming in my ears. I sprinted to the front doors, fumbling with the keys, my hands shaking so badly I dropped them. The steps were behind me, slower now, taunting, like he knew I couldn't escape. I grabbed the keys, unlocked the door, and burst outside the cool night air, hitting me like a wave. I ran to my car, parked across the lot, and locked myself inside, my breath fogging the windows. I called the police, my voice shaking as I told them everything. The steps, the man, the chase. They arrived minutes later, their flashlights cutting through the dark, and I watched from my car, shivering as they entered the store. They found him in the back room, hiding among the crates, his face blank, his eyes empty. He'd been there before, closing, they said, slipped into the shadows, and stayed watching me. Why they didn't know. Nothing was stolen, no clear motive, just the chilling certainty that he'd been there, inches from me, moving through the aisles, like a ghost. I drove home to my parents' house, the store's lights fading in my rearview mirror, but the fear didn't leave. He was there all night, hunting me in the dark. I never went back to that job. I quit the next day, unable to face those aisles, those shadows. The store closed a few years later, replaced by a chain pharmacy, but I still see it in my dreams. The flickering lights, the endless aisles, the man's silhouette at the end. Sometimes, when I'm alone at night, I hear it a single step, soft, but deliberate, echoing just beyond the edge of silence. And I wonder if he's still out there, in some other store, some other night, waiting for someone to hear him, to see him, to run. The rain didn't just fall. It roared a relentless assault that shook the bones of our ancient house, its 150-year-old timbers groaning under the storm's fury. I was 21, lying awake on the third floor, the attic room I'd claimed as my own when I heard it. A sound that wasn't. The wind wasn't the rain. It was footsteps, deliberate and heavy, crunching on the gravel path below. And then a whistle, low and mournful, slicing through the storm, like a blade through flesh. My heart seized, and in that moment, I knew someone was out there in the dark, coming closer, and they wanted me to know they were there. I'd grown up in this New England colonial, a sprawling relic of creaking floors and shadowed corners. With 5 siblings, the house was never quiet. Laughter, arguments, and footsteps filled its halls. But after college, it was just me and my mom, the others scattered to their own lives. My room was a sanctuary, tucked under the eaves, its single window overlooking the front walkway. Mom's room was 1 floor below her, snores of faint comfort in the night. The house had always felt alive, its quirks familiar, but tonight it was different. The storm had turned it into a fortress under siege, and I was alone in its highest tower. It was past midnight when the rain woke me, its rhythm a restless drumbeat against the roof. I lay still, staring at the slanted ceiling, the shadows dancing in the flicker of a distant streetlight. The wind howled, rattling the window, but beneath it, I heard something else, those footsteps slow and measured, like someone pacing with purpose. I held my breath, straining to listen. Was it just the storm playing tricks? The gravel path was old, uneven, and no one would be out in this weather. Not in our quiet suburb. Then came the whistle. Not a tune you'd hum, not a casual sound. It was deliberate, a single note stretched thin, rising and falling like a warning. My skin prickled, a chill spreading from my neck to my fingertips. I sat up, the bed springs protesting, and told myself it was nothing, a neighbor maybe, or my imagination running wild. But the whistle came again, closer now, and the footsteps grew louder, their crunch unmistakable. Someone was walking toward the house, toward my house, and they weren't hiding. I swung my legs over the bed, my bare feet hitting the cold floor. The room was dark, save for the faint glow through the blinds. I crept to the window, my heart pounding each step, a battle against the urge to dive back under the covers. I parted the blinds, just a sliver, and peered out. The rain blurred the world, but there he was, a tall figure, maybe a block away, moving slowly down the sidewalk. He wore a trench coat, its hem flapping in the wind, and carried a large black umbrella that hid his face. His steps were steady, unhurried, and the whistle drifted up again, faint but piercing, like he was calling to me. When I was 12, I'd snuck out to meet friends at a park, the night thick with fog. We'd dared each other to cross the old bridge, whispering ghost stories. But when a car's headlights swept over us, we froze, convinced it was something sinister. We ran laughing later, but the fear had been real, primal. That memory surged now, the same dread pooling in my gut. But this wasn't a game. This was my home. And he was coming closer. I watched, transfixed, as he approached the walkway leading to our front door. The gravel crunched louder, his steps deliberate, and I expected him to keep walking, to pass by, like any stranger would. But he didn't. He stopped right at the edge of our property and turned to face the house. The umbrella tilted back, and though I couldn't see his face, shadowed by the brim, I felt his gaze, heavy and unyielding, aimed at my window. My breath caught my fingers, trembling on the blinds. He stood there, motionless, the rain cascading off his umbrella, the whistle silent now, but echoing in my mind. I don't know how long he stayed. Seconds, minutes, an eternity. Time warped the storm, a cocoon around us, him outside me, inside, locked in a silent standoff. My mind raced. Was he a burglar? A prankster? Something worse. The house was old, its locks flimsy, and Mom was asleep, oblivious. I thought about calling her, waking her, but I couldn't move, couldn't tear my eyes from him. He hadn't done anything. Not really. But his presence was a violation, a crack in the safety I'd taken for granted. Then he moved. Not toward the door, not away, but just enough to shift the umbrella, as if confirming he saw me. My stomach lurched. I let the blinds snap shut, my hands shaking, and backed away, tripping over a pile of books. I hit the floor, my pulse roaring in my ears, and waited, listening for footsteps on the porch. A knock anything. But there was only the rain, the wind, the house's groans. I crawled to the bed, pulling the blanket over me. Like a child, my eyes fixed on the door. Minutes passed, and I gathered the courage to look again. I crept back to the window, parting the blinds with a trembling finger. He was gone. The walkway was empty, the street dark, the rain washing away any trace. Relief flooded me, but it was brittle, tinged with doubt. Had he left? Or was he closer now, hidden in the shadows of the yard? I listened, straining for the whistle, but it didn't come. The silence was worse, a void filled with possibilities I didn't want to face. I bolted downstairs, my feet slapping the cold wood, and burst into Mom's room. She stirred, groggy, her face soft in the lamplight. "What's wrong?" she mumbled, sitting up. I told her everything. The footsteps, the whistle, the man who'd stared at my window. My voice shook, and I felt foolish, 21, and begging to sleep in her room. But the fear was real, raw. She held me, her hand warm on my back, and let me curl up on her floor, a pillow under my head. I didn't sleep. Not really. Just lay there, listening to the storm, waiting for the whistle to return. Morning came gray and sodden. The rain a drizzle now. I checked the yard, the walkway, but found nothing. No footprints, no signs of him. Mom said it was probably a neighbor caught in the storm, but her voice lacked conviction. I knew what I'd seen, what I'd felt. The house felt different after that, its shadows deeper, its quiet louder. I started locking my window, checking the doors, avoiding the attic at night. But the fear lingered a stain on every rainy day. Months later, I found a newspaper article buried in the local section. A string of break-ins, all in our suburb, all on stormy nights. No one hurt, nothing stolen, just doors left ajar, footprints in the mud. The police had no suspects, no leads. I read it again, my hands cold, picturing him. The trench coat, the umbrella, the whistle. Was it him, testing houses, watching, waiting? Or was he something else? Something that thrived in the rain, that chose me because I was alone, because I listened. I moved out a year later to an apartment in the city where the noise of traffic drowned out the quiet. But I still hear him sometimes in the patter of rain on my roof, in the hum of a distant tune. I close my curtains, check my locks, but it doesn't matter. He's out there in the storm, his whistle a thread that binds me to that night, to the moment I looked into the dark and saw something looking back. Every rain brings him back. Every shadow feels like his. And every time I hear a whistle, I wonder if he's still walking, still watching, still waiting for me to answer. The red car sat like a predator at the edge of my street, its crimson paint glinting under the street light, a silent promise of something wrong. I lived alone, my rented house a fragile shield against the world. But that night, as I heard the back door shudder under violent blows, I knew the truth. I was being watched, hunted, and the eyes in that car had marked me as prey. Moving into the house was a quiet victory. After years of cramped apartments and noisy roommates, I'd found a place to call my own, a modest rental in a neighborhood where the streets were lined with unremarkable homes, each with its tidy lawn and predictable routine. I'd moved in last spring, the air still crisp with the promise of new beginnings. Living alone was both liberating and daunting, the silence of the house a canvas for my thoughts. I'd furnished it sparsely, a second-hand couch, a wobbly dining table, a bed that creaked under my weight. But it was mine, a sanctuary carved from the chaos of my past. The neighborhood felt safe, its residents a mix of families and retirees who waved politely but kept to themselves. I settled into a rhythm, work filling my days, nights spent with books or the soft glow of my laptop. But that rhythm faltered the day I saw the red car. It was a Saturday, the sky a flat gray, the air heavy with the threat of rain. I stepped outside to grab my mail, the gravel crunching under my sneakers, and noticed it. A red sedan parked across the street, maybe 50 feet from my driveway. Its color stood out a splash of blood against the muted tones of the neighborhood. I wouldn't have thought much of it, but something about its stillness caught my eye. As I reached the mailbox, I glanced over and saw him, a man in the driver's seat, his head bowed, his face obscured by the angle. He wasn't moving, just sitting, as if the car were an extension of his body. I'd seen the car an hour earlier, parked in the same spot, and the realization prickled my skin. He's been there all this time. I grabbed my mail, my movements deliberate, and walked back to the house, resisting the urge to look back. It's nothing, I told myself, closing the door. Just a guy waiting for someone, but it wasn't nothing. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the street in shades of amber and shadow, I passed by the front window and froze. The red car was still there, its silhouette sharper now, the man still in the driver's seat. His window was down, his arm resting on the frame, and in his hand was a phone, its screen glowing faintly. He held it up, angled toward my house, the lens a dark eye capturing my home. My breath caught my body, instinctively stepping back from the window. Is he taking pictures? The thought was absurd, but it rooted itself a seed of unease sprouting fast. I watched from the corner of the curtain, my heart thudding, but he didn't seem to notice me. Minutes later, when I checked again, the car was gone, the street empty once more. I exhaled, my nerves frayed, and tried to shake it off. He's gone. It's over. 2 nights later, the illusion of safety shattered. I was in my bedroom, the clock ticking. Past midnight, my eyes heavy from scrolling through videos. I had no work the next day, so I'd let the hours slip away, the house quiet, except for the hum of my laptop. Then, a sound tore through the silence, a heavy, deliberate thud from the back door, like a fist striking wood. I bolted upright, my laptop sliding to the floor, my pulse a drum beat in my ears. Someone's trying to break in. The thought was immediate, visceral, flooding me with a fear I'd never known. I stood my legs unsteady and moved toward the door, each step a battle against panic. Another thud echoed louder, more insistent, and I froze in the hallway, my eyes darting to the shadows. Is it him? The man from the car. I crept toward the back door, my bare feet cold against the tiles, my mind scrambling for a plan. I had no weapons, no batty or knife tucked away for emergencies. Why didn't I prepare for this? The realization stung, a reminder of my naivety. A third sound came, not a thud, but a scraping the doorknob, twisting against the lock. Relief flickered. The door was locked, but it was drowned by dread. I edged to the window, beside the door, my breath shallow, and peered through the blinds. A figure stood there, a man's silhouette, his features lost in the dark. I couldn't see his face, couldn't tell if it was the man from the red car, but the weight of his presence pressed against me, a violation of my home's fragile boundaries. I backed away, my hands shaking, my mind a whirlwind. Call the police. The thought was obvious, but in that moment, fear clouded my judgment. My fingers fumbling for my phone. Instead, a wild idea took hold, born of desperation. I opened YouTube, my thumbs clumsy, and searched for an alarm sound, something loud, jarring a weapon of noise. The first video loaded an ad blaring before I skipped it, my heart racing as I cranked the volume to max. The alarm erupted, a piercing wail that filled the house, its shrill notes a defiance against the intruder. I held the phone toward the door, my body braced, and listened. The scraping stopped, the silhouette retreating, his steps fading as he rounded the house and vanished into the night. I sank to the floor, the phone still blaring, my chest heaving. The alarm looped its sound, a tether to reality. But my mind was elsewhere, replaying the man's shape, the red car's glare. Was it him? I forced myself to stand my legs, weak, and dialed 911, my voice trembling as I recounted the night's terror. The police arrived, their flashlights sweeping the yard, their questions calm but probing. They found scuff marks on the back door, a dent where force had been applied, but no other trace of the intruder. I told them about the red car, the man with the phone, but their faces were skeptical, their words measured. "We'll look into it," they said, leaving me with a report and a promise to patrol the area. They never found him, and I never saw the red car again. But the connection felt undeniable, a thread tying those moments of dread together. Weeks later, a conversation at a neighbor's barbecue gave me chills. An older woman, her hands wrinkled from years of gardening, mentioned a string of incidents in the area. Cars lingering, strangers knocking, late at night. "They don't always steal," she said, her voice low. "Sometimes they just watch, waiting for the right moment." I nodded, my throat tight. The memory of the red car's phone lens burning in my mind. Had he been watching me, studying my routines, my vulnerabilities? The thought was a shadow following me through the house's quiet rooms. There's another memory, one I've kept close. The day I signed the lease, the realtor, a brisk woman with a tight smile, handed me the keys and paused. "It's a good house," she said, her eyes flickering to the street. "But keep an eye out. Some folks around here get too curious." I'd brushed it off, eager to start fresh, but her words haunted me after that night. Had she known something, seen something in the neighborhood's undercurrents? I never asked, but her warning became a ritual, a check of every lock before bed, a glance at the street for crimson ghosts. The house is still my home, though I've added a security camera. Its red light, a small comfort in the dark. I don't feel safe, not truly, not after knowing someone stood at my door. Their intentions a mystery I may never solve. Some eyes watch from afar, but others come closer, testing the edges of your world. I still see the red car in quiet moments, its paint a warning, and I wonder if he's out there waiting for another chance to step into my life. The car wasn't just parked. It was waiting, its black silhouette, a predator in the night, watching my every move. I'd just finished a grueling shift at the warehouse, my body heavy with exhaustion, my eyes burning from hours under fluorescent lights. It was 4:15 a.m. The streets empty, the world asleep. My house sat in a quiet neighborhood, each home spaced far enough to feel alone. As I pulled into my driveway, my headlights caught it. A black sedan parked right beside my property, its tinted windows swallowing the streetlight's glow. My heart skipped. Someone's watching me. The warehouse job kept me on a nocturnal schedule, awake from dusk to dawn, even on days off. I liked the rhythm, the quiet of the night, the way the world seemed to pause. But tonight, the quiet felt wrong heavy, like it was hiding something. I slowed as I passed the sedan, trying to peer through its dark windows, but they were impenetrable, reflecting only my own headlights. The car's lights were off its engine, silent, but it didn't feel empty. I pulled into my garage, my hands tight on the wheel, and glanced back. The sedan hadn't moved, but its presence was a weight pressing against my chest. I told myself it was nothing. A neighbor's guest, a late-night visitor, but the street was too quiet, too still, and my house felt exposed, its windows wide open to the dark. I stepped inside, locking the door behind me. The familiar hum of the fridge, a weak comfort. My living room was lit by a single lamp, its light pooling on the hardwood floor, leaving the corners in shadow. I checked the windows, the back door, every lock, my routine more urgent now. The sedan lingered in my mind, its tinted windows a void I couldn't read. I sank onto the couch, trying to shake the unease, but my eyes kept darting to the windows, expecting to see a face pressed against the glass. I remembered a coworker's story about a night he found his apartment door ajar, no one inside, but a single cigarette butt on his balcony. He never smoked. The thought sent a chill through me, but I pushed it away, telling myself I was tired, paranoid. I went to bed. The sedan's image burned into my mind, its silence louder than any sound. The next night, I returned from work, the same 4:00 a.m. Exhaustion dragging at my bones. The streets were empty again, the neighborhood a ghost town under the streetlights. But as I turned into my driveway, there it was, the same black sedan, parked in the exact same spot, its dark shape blending into the night. My stomach dropped. It's not a coincidence. I slowed my headlights, sweeping over it, and this time I stopped idling in the street. The windows were still too dark to see through, but I felt it eyes on me, hidden behind the glass, tracking my every move. I grabbed my phone, my hands unsteady, and snapped a photo of the license plate, the flash a brief flare in the dark. Better safe than sorry, I told myself, but the act felt futile, like shouting into a void. I parked in the garage, my heart pounding, and checked the sedan again before going inside. It hadn't moved, but the air felt charged, like the moment before a storm. I locked the door, double-checked it, and went through my routine lights on Windows' secure phone close. But the house didn't feel safe anymore. It felt watched, every shadow, a potential hiding place. I sat up that night, unable to sleep, my eyes fixed on the front window, the sedan's silhouette just visible through the blinds. It was gone by morning, but its absence didn't ease the tension. It felt like a pause, not an end, like it was waiting for me to let my guard down. The third night, it was back. Same spot, same silence, same impenetrable windows. I drove past slowly, my pulse racing, my phone ready in case I needed to call someone. I didn't approach it this time, didn't dare get close. Instead, I parked, locked the car, and hurried inside, my keys jangling in my hand. The house was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that amplifies every creak, every rustle. I checked my security cameras, 3 inside, 1 on the porch, hoping they'd show nothing, prove I was overreacting. But the app was frozen. The feed stuck on a blank screen. I restarted it, my fingers clumsy, and went to bed, the sedan's image haunting me, its presence a shadow I couldn't shake. I woke at 6:00 p.m. The sun already set, my body still on its nocturnal clock. I went for my usual walk, a loop around the neighborhood, to clear my head. The sedan wasn't there when I left, but when I returned an hour later, it was back parked in its usual spot, silent and menacing. My heart sank. They're following my routine. I approached the car, my steps slow, my phone clutched tight. I got close, maybe 10 feet away, and pressed my face to the window, shielding my eyes to block the streetlight's glare. The car was empty. No people, no clues, just a void of leather seats and darkness. I stepped back, my breath fogging in the cool air, and went inside, my mind racing. Who was doing this? Why me? I was in my bedroom, charging my phone when it happened. A notification pinged a motion alert from my security cameras. My blood ran cold. The alert didn't specify which camera, just a timestamp, 6:45 p.m., minutes ago. I opened the app, my hands shaking, and pulled up the footage. It was a 60-second clip from the bedroom camera, the one pointed at my bed. For 55 seconds, it showed nothing, just my empty room. The bed unmade, the lamp casting a soft glow. Then, in the last 5 seconds, something moved. A shadow, quick and human-shaped, darted across the bottom of the frame. Just a glimpse, part of a head, a shoulder, gone in an instant. My hands went numb. the phone nearly slipping from my grip. Someone was in my house. The silence was deafening my heartbeat, a roar in my ears. I turned slowly, my eyes scanning the room, expecting to see them behind the door, in the closet under the bed. Nothing. But the air was wrong, thick with a presence I couldn't see. I grabbed my phone, my keys, and moved toward the door, my steps silent but hurried. Then I heard it, movement, faint but unmistakable from the hallway. Footsteps, heavy and fast, closing in. I sprinted to the stairs, my breath ragged, the footsteps now just feet behind me. I didn't look back, didn't dare. I burst through the front door, running into the woods across the street, the darkness swallowing me as I dialed 911. The footsteps stopped, but I kept running, my lungs burning, until I was deep in the trees, hidden from the house, from the car, from whoever was there. The police arrived within minutes, their sirens cutting through the night. I emerged from the woods, shaking, and told them everything. The sedan, the photo, the camera footage, the chase. They searched the house, their flashlights sweeping every corner, and found it a broken lock on a downstairs window, tucked behind a curtain. The sedan was gone, but my photo of the license plate gave them a lead. 3 hours later, they had him, a man in his mid-20s, his eyes wild, his face a mask of rage. His phone was a nightmare. Photos of my house, my windows, me in my living room, oblivious. Notes tracking my schedule, my walks, my shifts, every detail of my life for weeks. He'd been watching me, mapping me, owning me in secret. I moved out a month later, but the fear stayed. I still see that sedan in my mind, its windows black, its presence a predator. I still check my cameras, my locks, my shadows. Sometimes, in the dead of night, I feel it eyes on me, hidden in the dark, waiting for me to look away. And I wonder if he's still out there, or someone like him, watching another house, another life, their gaze a silent invasion I'll never escape. The night was a void, a black expanse swallowing the world beyond the gas stations, flickering fluorescent lights. I stood behind the counter, the clock ticking past 2:00 a.m. The silence so heavy, it pressed against my skin. Then, through the large windows facing the pumps, I saw him, a figure stepping from the shadowed woods across the road, his silhouette sharp against the dark, moving, with a purpose that made my blood run cold. He wasn't just walking, he was coming for me, and the air in the store turned sour, like the world knew something I didn't. I was 24, working the overnight shift at a small gas station off a country road, 5 minutes from the trailer I called home. The station was a relic, its shelves stocked with dusty snacks, and warm sodas. No fuel pumps to worry about. Just a counter, a TV bolted to the ceiling, and me. Most nights were dead. Maybe 1 or 2 customers. After midnight, usually truckers grabbing a coffee before vanishing back into the dark. I liked the quiet, the way it let me sink into my thoughts. The TV's low hum, my only company. But tonight, the quiet felt wrong, like a held breath waiting to break. The station sat on the edge of nowhere, surrounded by tall grass and a dense forest that seemed to creep closer in the dark. The road was a ribbon of asphalt, rarely traveled at this hour, and the woods across the street were a wall of black, their branches swaying in the windless night. I'd been on shift since 10 Hailuo p.m., stocking shelves, wiping down the counter, the routine so ingrained I could do it blind. The TV played an old sitcom, the laugh track a faint echo, but I wasn't watching. I was staring out the window, my reflection pale in the glass when I saw him. He emerged from the woods, not from a path or a trail, but from the heart of the trees where no one should have been. He was tall, bald, with a slight beard, wearing sunglasses, despite the hour, their lenses glinting under the station's lights. My stomach twisted. Who wears sunglasses at 2 Hailuo a.m.? Who walks out of a forest with no car, no bag, no reason? He moved slowly, his steps deliberate, crossing the road and stepping onto the pavement near the pumps. He didn't look around, didn't hesitate, just stood there, his head tilted slightly, like he was studying the station, studying me. I gripped the counter, my palms slick. The TV droned on, but the sound felt distant, drowned by the pulse in my ears. I told myself he was just a drifter, someone lost. But my gut screamed otherwise. He lingered by the pumps, his silhouette a stain against the night, and I felt exposed, the windows too big, the station too bright. I thought about locking the door, but it was policy to keep it open until 3 Hailuo a.m. And besides, what would I say if my boss asked that I got spooked by a guy standing outside? I shook my head, trying to laugh it off, but the laugh died in my throat. When I was a kid, I'd camped with my dad in those same woods, the firelight dancing on the trees, as he told stories of hunters lost in the dark. One night, I'd wandered too far chasing a firefly and heard something, a rustle too heavy for a deer. I'd run back, my dad's arms a safe haven, but the feeling of being watched never left me. That memory hit now sharp and cold, the same dread curling in my chest. He moved again toward the station, his steps slow but relentless. I watched, frozen, as he reached the glass doors, and stopped. He didn't enter, just stood there, pulling a cigarette from his pocket. He lit it, the flame flaring briefly, and took a drag, the smoke curling into the air. His sunglasses hid his eyes, but I felt them boring into me through the glass. My hand crept under the counter, where I kept a bottle of pepper spray, its weight a small comfort. He smoked for what felt like forever, each puff deliberate, then flicked the cigarette to the ground and walked away, crossing the street and vanishing back into the woods. Relief flooded me, but it was short-lived. The woods swallowed him, but the darkness felt alive now, watching. I checked the clock, 2:15 a.m. Less than an hour until I could lock up and go home. I busied myself, rearranging candy bars, wiping the counter again, anything to keep my hands, moving my mind occupied. But my eyes kept darting to the windows, expecting him to reappear. His sunglasses glinting like a predator's eyes at 2:45 a.m. I saw movement again. My heart lurched. He was back, emerging from the woods like a specter crossing the road, with the same slow, deliberate steps. This time, he didn't stop at the pumps. He walked straight to the doors, pushed them open, and stepped inside. The air shifted, grew heavy, like the station had become a trap. He walked toward the counter, his boots leaving wet prints on the linoleum, and stopped a few feet away. Up close, he was even more unsettling. Tall, wiry, his skin pale under the fluorescence, his sunglasses a void where his eyes should have been. "Hi," I said, my voice thin. "Can I help you?" He didn't smile, didn't blink. "I need $1,500, he said, his voice low, flat, like he was ordering a coffee. My mind blanked. What I asked, hoping I'd misheard, praying this was a joke. $1,500, he repeated, leaning closer, his hands flat on the counter. His voice was louder now, edged with anger, and I saw a muscle twitch in his jaw. My heart pounded, my hand tightening on the pepper spray. He wasn't holding a weapon, but his presence was a threat, his closeness a violation. The station felt smaller, the walls closing in the TV's hum, a mockery of normalcy. "Look, man," I said, my voice shaking. "I don't have that kind of money here." It was true. The register barely held $100, mostly change. But he didn't move, didn't respond, just leaned closer, his sunglasses reflecting my terrified face. I could smell the cigarette smoke on him, mixed with something sharper, like damp earth or decay. "Give it to me," he said, his voice a growl now, his body tensing. My hand closed around the pepper spray, my thumb on the trigger. I didn't want to use it. didn't want to escalate, but every instinct screamed that he wasn't leaving, that he'd cross the counter if I didn't act. I raised the bottle, my hand trembling, and pointed it at his face. "Get out!" I said, my voice louder than I expected. "I'm calling the cops." He didn't flinch, didn't back away. For a moment, I thought he'd lunge, thought I'd feel his hands on me, thought this was it. But then I pressed the trigger, and the spray hit him square in the face. He staggered back, clawing at his eyes, his sunglasses falling to the floor. I caught a glimpse of his eyes, red wild, not human, and then he was stumbling toward the door, his hands over his face. "Get out!" I shouted again, my voice raw, and he pushed through the doors, disappearing into the night. I stood there, the pepper spray still in my hand, my breath ragged. The station was silent again, but it wasn't the same. The air was tainted, the windows too exposed, the woods too close. I locked the doors, policy be damned, and called the police, my voice shaking as I told them what happened. They arrived 20 minutes later, 2 officers with flashlights searching the lot, the woods, finding nothing. No footprints, no cigarette butt, no trace of him. They took my statement, told me to stay vigilant, and left. I finished my shift, but I didn't feel safe. I locked up at 3 a.m., my hands trembling as I turned off the lights, expecting him to step from the shadows. I drove home, the woods looming in my rearview mirror, and locked myself in my trailer, checking every window, every door. I quit the job a week later. I couldn't handle the nights anymore, the way every shadow felt like him, every rustle a step in the dark. Years later, I read about a string of robberies at gas stations along that road, all at night, all with no witnesses, no suspects. The descriptions were vague, but one detail stood out. A man in sunglasses seen walking into the woods. I don't know if it was him, but I know what I felt that night. The certainty that he wasn't just a thief, that he was something else, something that belonged to the dark, to the woods, to the places we don't go. Every night, I check the locks. Every shadow feels like his. And sometimes, in the quiet, I swear I smell cigarette smoke, faint and sour, drifting through the air, reminding me he's still out there, waiting. The rain fell like a curtain over the deserted park, its rhythm a soft hiss against the concrete. Eerie and I sat on a bench, our laughter muffled by the damp night, unaware that we were not alone. Across the basketball courts, a man watched us, his silhouette a jagged tear in the darkness. When he ran toward us, his strides devouring the distance, we learned a truth that still chills me. Some dangers don't warn you, they hunt you. At 15, I thought I knew the world. Eerie, my best friend, was 14, a year younger, but bolder, her recklessness, a spark that lit our adventures. We were part of a crew of skaters, kids who lived for the grind of wheels on pavement and the haze of weed in our lungs. Summer break was our kingdom nights spent in backyards or empty lots, passing joints and dreaming of futures we couldn't yet see. But that night, the rain changed everything. It had poured all day, turning the streets to rivers, the skate spots to slick traps. Our friends bailed their boards, useless, on wet ground, leaving Eerie and me to fend for ourselves. "Let's go anyway," she said, her eyes glinting with defiance. I hesitated, the weather a warning I couldn't ignore, but her grin won me over. We needed each other, two girls against the world, and the night was ours to claim. We chose the handball courts at my old elementary school, a place we'd claimed as our own. The courts sat in a sunken yard, shaded by a massive oak, whose branches drooped under the rain's weight. A concrete slope led down to the basketball courts, 10 of them, stretching toward a playground shrouded in mist. The park was public, tethered to the school, but open to all its emptiness. That night, a gift and a curse. We settled on a bench under the tree, the wood damp but bearable, and lit up the smoke curling into the air like ghosts. Music played from Eerie's phone, a low beat that pulsed against the rain's drone. The world felt small, just us, and the night adults asleep, the city quiet under the storm's grip. Then I saw him. Across the courts, near the playground's edge, a man sat on a bench, his form hulking against the dim streetlights. He was huge, his shoulders broad, his posture rigid, like a statue carved from shadow. I nudged Ari, my voice low. "Look over there." She squinted, her carefree smile fading, but she shrugged it off. "Chill. He's just some dude," she said, exhaling a cloud of smoke. But I couldn't chill. Something was wrong. His stillness, his focus. He wasn't smoking, wasn't on his phone, wasn't moving at all. His head faced us, unyielding, as if we were the only things in his world. What's he doing here? The park was a wasteland. No one out in this weather. No reason for a grown man to sit alone at midnight. I leaned closer to Eerie, my voice urgent. "Turn off the music." She rolled her eyes, but complied the silence, rushing in heavy with the rain's patter and my growing dread. I watched him, my eyes straining through the dark, searching for a sign, a glance away, a shift in posture, anything to prove he wasn't fixated on us. He didn't budge his gaze, a weight I could feel pressing against my skin. Eerie sensed it too, her bravado cracking as she whispered, "Okay, yeah, that's weird." We decided to leave our movements careful, as if any sudden motion might provoke him. We stood our joints discarded and started down the concrete slope, our hands clasped tight, a lifeline against the unknown. The slope was steep, forcing us closer to his bench, though still far enough to feel a fragile safety. "Keep calm," I told myself. My eyes locked on him. "Don't let him know you're scared." But fear was a traitor, clawing at my chest, urging me to run. We were halfway down when he moved. Slowly, deliberately, he rose his height, unfolding like a nightmare. He was massive, his limbs long and powerful, his presence a distortion in the rain-soaked air. My breath caught my grip on Eerie's hand tightening. "Don't run," I whispered more to myself than her. Then, in a heartbeat, he changed. His stillness shattered his body, surging forward, his strides devouring the ground. "He's coming for us." The thought was a scream in my mind, and we broke our hands, slipping as we bolted down the slope, our sneakers slapping the wet concrete. My lungs burned my heart, a frantic drum, as we spilled onto the road, our screams tearing through the night. The street was a ghost town, its usual bustle erased by the rain. Street lights cast weak pools of light, their glow swallowed by the dark. We ran, our breaths ragged, our eyes darting for salvation. Instinct drove us toward the park, where our crew usually hung out a block away across the street and around the basketball courts. "They'll be there," I prayed, knowing it was a lie. The man's footsteps echoed behind us, his long legs closing the gap, his presence a shadow at our heels. I risked a glance back his silhouette, a blur in the rain, his speed unnatural, relentless. Ari's face was pale, her eyes wide with terror. But we kept running our bond, a silent vow to survive together. The other park was deserted, its swings still, its benches empty. Despair clawed at me, our stamina fading the distance to safety, stretching like a nightmare. We pushed on our legs, heavy, our breaths gasping, until we reached the highway overpass, its lights a faint promise of refuge. We stopped our bodies, trembling, and looked back. He was gone. The road was empty, the rain falling in sheets, no sign of the man who'd chased us. Where is he? The question hung between us unanswered as we caught our breath. The overpass's concrete walls, a temporary shield. Had he given up, realizing we were too fast, too determined? Or had he meant only to scare us, a predator toying with prey? I didn't care. I just wanted to be anywhere but here. We walked home, the rain soaking us, our silence heavy with what we'd escaped. The memory of his silhouette, his sudden sprint, burned in my mind, a wound that wouldn't heal. We never went back to that park, never spoke of that night to our friends. It was ours, a secret forged in fear, a reminder of how close we'd come to something unthinkable. Ari and I drifted apart over the years, our paths diverging as we grew. But that night bound us a thread of terror we'd never unravel. A story from my childhood surfaced in the aftermath, one I'd forgotten until that night. My older cousin, a skater like us, had told me about the park years ago, his voice low as we sat on his porch. Kids go missing there sometimes. He'd said, his eyes distant. Not often, but enough to notice. They say it's just runaways, but I don't buy it. I'd laughed, dismissing it as a tale to spook me. But his words echoed now, sharp and cold. Had that man been part of something darker? A hunter in a place where kids like us felt invincible? I'll never know. But the possibility haunts me, a shadow in the corners of my memory. I'm older now, my skating days behind me. But I avoid parks at night, their emptiness, a lure for things I'd rather not meet. The rain still brings it back, the sound of our screams, the feel of Ari's hand in mine. Some nights, the hunters come and no light can outrun them. I wonder if he's still out there, watching from the shadows, waiting for another pair of kids to wander into his rain-soaked trap. The shadow didn't belong in my yard. It lingered deliberate, like it was claiming the ground I'd worked so hard to tame. I'd just moved into the new house, a sprawling place with an acre of land, a dream after years, in a cramped townhouse. The sun was setting, painting the grass gold, and I was out back, pulling weeds, my hands caked with dirt. Then I saw him, a man standing at the edge of my property, his silhouette sharp against the fading light. My heart stuttered. Who's watching me? The move was a fresh start for my family. My wife, our young daughter, and me. The neighborhood was quiet. Each house set back from the street, surrounded by trees and open space. The yard was my pride, a canvas I'd spent weeks planning to transform. It was raw, full of dead patches and overgrown weeds, but I saw potential flower beds, a vegetable garden, a place for my daughter to play. That day, I'd been out since morning, hauling bags of soil, trimming bushes, my shirt soaked with sweat. The work was hard, but satisfying, each cleared patch, a step toward making this place ours. I'd gone to Home Depot for supplies, a quick trip, and returned to dive back in the sun, low, the air cooling. I was kneeling by a flower bed when I glanced up, my eyes catching movement near the street. The man was there, standing just inside my yard, maybe 50 feet away, between our house and the neighbors. He was older, maybe in his 50s, dressed in dark clothes, his posture unnaturally still. He wasn't a neighbor. I'd met them, all friendly folks who waved from their porches. This man was different. His gaze fixed on me, slow and deliberate, like he was measuring me. My stomach twisted. I stood wiping my hands on my jeans and watched him. He didn't move, didn't wave, just stared, his presence a violation in the open space. "He doesn't belong here," I called out, my voice steady but edged with unease. "Can I help you?" No answer. He tilted his head slightly, like he was studying me, then started walking slowly, too slowly toward me. My pulse quickened. The yard felt too big now, too exposed, the trees and bushes offering too many places to hide. I stepped forward, my shovel in hand, its weight a small comfort. "This is private property," I said louder now. But he didn't stop. His steps were measured, his eyes locked on mine, unblinking. I tightened my grip on the shovel, my mind racing. Run inside, call for help, stand my ground. Then abruptly, he veered left, moving toward the side of the house, out of sight, behind the garage. I hurried after him, my boots sinking into the soft earth, my heart pounding. I rounded the corner, expecting to see him at the front door, knocking, or worse. But he was gone. The front yard was empty, the street quiet, no cars, no figures. I checked the porch. The driveway even peered into the neighbor's yard. Nothing. Just the fading light, the trees rustling in the breeze, the air heavy with the scent of cut grass. I went inside, my hands shaking as I locked the door and called to my wife. "Anyone come by?" She shook her head, her eyes puzzled, and I told her about the man, my words tumbling out. She suggested he was a passerby cutting through our yard, but her voice was thin, uncertain. I nodded, wanting to believe her, but the man's gaze lingered in my mind, cold and invasive. The next day, I was back in the yard, determined to shake the unease. The sun was bright, the neighborhood alive with kids on bikes, dogs barking. I worked harder, digging trenches for a new garden. Bed my muscles burning, my mind focused. But my eyes kept drifting to the street, to the edge of the property, expecting him to reappear. He didn't. I finished early, The yard transformed neat rows of soil-trimmed bushes, a patch of grass raked smooth. I stood back, hands on hips, proud of the progress. The house felt like ours. Again, the man's presence, a fading memory. That night, I couldn't sleep. The bedroom was quiet, the only sound my wife's soft breathing and the hum of the ceiling fan. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, the man's silhouette replaying in my head. I got up, careful not to wake her, and went to the window, overlooking the backyard. The moon was full, casting a silver glow over the yard, the new garden beds stark against the grass. I scanned the trees, the bushes, the shadows. Nothing. But the air felt wrong, heavy, like it was holding its breath. I went back to bed, telling myself I was paranoid, but sleep came slowly fractured by dreams of footsteps in the grass. I woke to chaos. The backyard was a wreck garden. Beds, torn up soil, scattered bushes, hacked at with something sharp. The grass was trampled, patches of dirt kicked over, like someone had raged through it. My chest tightened, anger and fear colliding. He did this. I knew it was him, the man from the yard, his slow stare, now a taunt, etched into the earth. I walked the property, my boots sinking into the ruined soil, my hands clenched. The damage was deliberate, not random, each bed targeted, each bush slashed with precision. I checked the front yard, the street hoping for a clue, but found nothing. No footprints, no tire marks, just the devastation of my work. I told my wife, my voice shaking with rage. She was pale, her eyes wide, and suggested we call the police. But what could they do? No evidence, no witnesses, just a gut feeling, tying it to the man. I spent the day cleaning up, redigging beds, raking grass, my muscles screaming, my mind racing. I remembered a neighbor's story about a vandalism spree years ago. Cars scratched, lawns torn up, no one caught. The thought made my skin crawl. But this felt personal, like the man had marked me, my yard, my home. That night, I ordered security cameras. Overnight, delivery determined to catch him if he returned. I barely slept, my eyes fixed on the window, the yard a battlefield in the moonlight. The cameras arrived the next day. I spent hours installing them, one on the porch, two in the backyard, one by the driveway. Their red lights blinked in the dark, a promise of safety. But the yard felt tainted, its open space now a threat. I worked late, repairing the last of the damage. My hands blistered, my heart heavy. The man didn't return that day or the next, but I checked the cameras obsessively. Every shadow, a suspect. Every rustle, a warning. The neighborhood was quiet, the street empty, but I felt him, his gaze, his presence lurking just beyond the light. Weeks passed, and the yard healed. New plants took root. The grass grew back. The cameras kept watch. The man never returned, his shadow fading, but not gone. I still see him in my mind, standing at the edge of my property, his eyes cold, his steps slow. Sometimes, when I'm alone in the yard, I feel it a prickle on my neck, a sense of eyes in the trees. And I wonder if he's still out there, waiting for another yard, another home to claim with his silent, ruinous touch. The morning sun didn't bring peace. It exposed a wound. I stood at the edge of my backyard, the grass torn and trampled, my hours of labor reduced to chaos. The flower beds I'd planted were uprooted, their petals scattered like confetti from a cruel celebration. The stone path I'd laid was shattered, its pieces glinting in the dew. But it wasn't just the destruction that chilled me. It was the feeling, heavy and unshakable, that whoever did this had been watching me, had waited until I slept, and had left their mark, not just on my land, but on my soul. We'd moved into this house a month ago. My wife, our young daughter, and me, trading a cramped townhouse for a sprawling yard in a quiet neighborhood. The house was modest, but the yard, nearly an acre, was my pride. I'd spent weeks transforming it, pulling weeds, planting roses, laying stones, dreaming of barbecues and laughter under the stars. It was my sanctuary, a place to build memories for my family. But yesterday, that sanctuary had been invaded. A man older, with a slow, unsettling gait, had walked onto our property, staring at me as I worked. He'd vanished behind the house, only to reappear later, silent and watchful, before driving away in an old car. I thought it was over, thought he was gone. I was wrong. That morning, I woke early, the sky still gray, my body aching from yesterday's labor. My wife was in the kitchen, humming as she made coffee. Our daughter giggling over cartoons in the living room. The house felt warm, safe, a bubble against the world. I stepped onto the back porch, coffee in hand, ready to admire my work. But the sight stopped me cold. The yard was a battlefield. The grass, once lush, was gouged deep furrows, carved as if by claws. The roses were torn from their roots, their stems snapped, their red petals bleeding into the dirt. The stone path, my pride, was a ruin, each slab cracked or displaced, some stacked in a mocking pile at the yard's edge. My coffee cup slipped from my hand, shattering on the porch. My wife called out, sensing my silence, but I couldn't answer. I stepped into the yard, my boots sinking into the churned earth, my heart pounding. This wasn't random vandalism. It was deliberate, personal. The damage followed a pattern, a spiral that tightened toward the center of the yard, where a single rose stood untouched, its petals pristine amid the wreckage. I stared at it, my skin prickling, a memory flickering yesterday. I'd planted that rose last my hands stained with soil, unaware of eyes watching from the trees. I turned, scanning the yard's edges, the line of oaks and bushes that bordered our neighbors' properties. The air was still, the neighborhood asleep, but I felt it, a gaze heavy and unyielding, like a weight on my neck. I thought of him, the man from yesterday, his slow walk, his wordless stare. Had he come back? Had he waited, hidden in the dark, to undo my work, to claim this space as his own? I shook my head, trying to rationalize. Kids, maybe. A prank. But the spiral, the rose, the precision. It wasn't the work of bored teenagers. It was a message, and I didn't know how to read it. When I was a boy, my grandfather had a farm, its fields stretching to the horizon. One summer, we found his cornfield trampled stalks, bent into circles. No footprints, no tracks. He'd stared at the damage, his face pale, and whispered about things that walked at night, things that marked their territory. I'd laughed, called it a hoax, but his fear stayed with me, a seed that grew in moments like this, when the world felt too quiet, too watched. I called my wife out. My voice strained. She gasped her hand over her mouth and pulled our daughter close when she toddled to the door. Who would do this? She whispered, her eyes wide. I didn't answer. Couldn't. I walked the yard, cataloging the damage, my anger rising with each step. The spiral was deliberate, its curves too perfect, too planned. I found other signs, a footprint too large for a child pressed deep in the mud, a cigarette butt, its filter stained near the untouched rose, a scratch on the oak tree, fresh and jagged like a claw mark. Each discovery tightened the knot in my chest, the certainty that he'd been here, that he wasn't done. I called the police, my voice shaking as I described the vandalism, the man from yesterday, the car that had lingered too long. They arrived an hour later, 2 officers with notepads, their faces skeptical. They walked the yard, took photos, but their questions were routine, their interest faint. Probably kids, one said, kicking a broken stone, or an animal. I pointed to the footprint, the cigarette, the spiral, but they shrugged, said they'd file a report, and left. Their dismissal stung But it didn't surprise me. They hadn't seen him, hadn't felt his stare, hadn't woken to a yard that screamed violation. My wife wanted to move to leave this house, this yard, but I couldn't. Not yet. The yard was mine, my work, my dream. I spent the day repairing what I could, hauling broken stones, replanting what remained. My hands blistered, my back aching. But every shovelful felt futile. Every rose, I replanted a defiance against something I didn't understand. I kept glancing at the trees, expecting him to step out, his slow walk a taunt. He didn't, but the feeling of being watched never left a shadow that grew longer as the sun set. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the living room, the curtains drawn, a baseball bat by my side. My wife and daughter slept upstairs, their breaths soft, unaware of the weight pressing on me. I listened to the house, its creaks and sighs, each sound a potential threat. Around 2 a.m., I heard it, not a footstep, not a voice, but a rustle, faint and deliberate from the backyard. My heart lurched. I gripped the bat, my palms slick, and crept to the back door, its glass panel a dark mirror. I peered out, my breath fogging the glass, and saw nothing, just the yard silver under the moon, the spiral scars still visible, but then a glint. Something moved at the yard's edge near the oak tree. I squinted my eyes, adjusting, and saw it a shape, tall and lean, standing among the bushes. My blood ran cold. It was him. I was sure, his silhouette unmistakable, his presence a violation. He didn't move, didn't approach, just stood there, a sentinel in the dark. I wanted to shout, to run out to confront him, but fear rooted me. My legs heavy, my bat useless against the unknown. I watched my breath shallow until he turned and melted into the trees, leaving only the rustle of leaves. I didn't call the police again. What would I say? That I saw a shadow, felt a stare. Instead, I bought security cameras the next day, mounting them around the house, their red lights a feeble shield. I checked the footage obsessively, but found nothing. No man, no car, no proof. The yard stayed quiet, the repairs holding, but the peace was fragile, a lie I told myself to sleep. I started locking the back door, twice, checking the windows, avoiding the yard at night. My wife noticed her eyes, worried, but I brushed it off, said it was nothing, said we were safe. Months later, I found a forum online, a thread about strange encounters in our town. One post stopped me. A woman 2 streets over described a man in an old car watching her house. Her garden trampled one night, a single flower left untouched. The details matched too closely. The spiral, the cigarette, the stare. I messaged her, my hands shaking, but she never replied. I searched for more, found whispers of other incidents, yards ruined, homes, watched always at night, always without witnesses. No arrests, no answers, just a pattern that felt like a warning. I don't work in the yard anymore. The roses have withered, the stones lie scattered, the spiral faded, but never gone. We're selling the house, moving to a city where the lights never dim, where yards are small and fenced. But I know he's out there, somewhere, his car idling on a quiet street, his eyes hidden, his hands ready to tear apart another sanctuary. I see him in every shadow, feel him in every rustle, smell him in the faint tang of cigarette smoke that lingers in my dreams. Every night, I check the cameras. Every shadow feels like his. And sometimes, in the quiet, I swear I see that rose standing alone, its petals red against the ruin, a mark of something that will never let me go.